Welcome back to the Institute for Business Growth in the Sales Accelerator Workshop. We're in Module 14, Lesson 3, and here's where we're going to continue with some time management secrets that I found to be very effective. We're going to jump right in. So, one successful technique is to minimize meetings. Many times we have meetings because if we're meeting with someone, at least we feel like we're doing what we should be doing, getting in front of people. Many times the people we're getting in front of are not the people that we need to meet. They're not decision makers. They just make us feel good. So if you're going to have a meeting, first of all, decide if a meeting's necessary. When I get a call over the phone and somebody wants to meet with me, my first question is, what would you like to talk about? And if we can address it right there, I will. If a meeting is in fact necessary, then I'll schedule it. But most of the time I try to answer or address whatever question they have right then and there. If you're going to have a meeting, have an agenda. Who, what, where, when, and why. Who are you meeting with? Are the critical parties there? What is the purpose of the meeting? What is the outcomes that you would expect to have in the meeting? What are the questions you need to ask to drive those outcomes? What are the potential objections you would have? Plan your meeting as if it were a sales call. When you're meeting, turn off your smartphone, for heaven's sakes. There's nothing more, in my opinion, disrespectful than having somebody watching their cell phone for messages or answering the phone or whatever. Now, sometimes that happens, and if they state up front that, hey, they're expecting an important call, is it okay if I take it if it comes in? That's a different story. But for people who are just watching their phone, what they're really telling me is they're not present and what I have to say isn't important. Or they think they're missing something that's more important. So please be respectful to the people you're meeting with. Turn off the phones and ask everybody else to do the same. I once had a referral partner. Whenever we met, we had an informal agreement that if your phone wasn't turned off and it rang, the person committed $10 to a charity of his choice. The next one, and this is probably the most toughest, but it's probably the most beneficial, is learn to say no. Learning to say no protects your time, it increases your productivity, and it allows you to get very focused on what's important to you. I remember the first time, this was probably 15 years ago, I said no. I kept getting a call from the same person over and over again, and I knew I would never buy from him. Not because his product was bad or did anything wrong, but because I just didn't have a need for his product or service. And after about the fifth call, I just finally said, listen, you have a great product, you have a great service, but I don't have a need for it. I'm going to tell you no because I want you to go find somebody who values your product and service as much as you do. Now, before I said that, I was sweating bullets, quite frankly. I was very, very nervous. After I was done, and it was very well received, I realized that I hit on a gold mine. Saying no is probably the single most important lesson that you can learn. If you don't know how to do it, I would really encourage you to spend some time saying no, just to get used to how it feels. We've all heard of the 80-20 rule. 80% of our results come from 20% of our action. Do a little time management study and just jot down every 15 minutes what you're working on. Create maybe a half a dozen categories, from prospecting to networking to customer service to education, travel, whatever you're doing, and start tracking your time. Just a little check mark in a box. It says, yeah, from 10:15 to 10:30 I was traveling, or from 10:30 to 11:15 I was meeting with someone. Get clear on where your results come from, and then build a calendar to focus on the 20% of the time that's giving you 80% of the results, and increase the 20% to 30, 35, or even 40%. Darren Hardy, the executive publisher for Success Magazine, once asked himself that question. He goes, I spend most of my time, the highest use of my time is selling. And he tracked his time, and he was relentless. How much time was spent in meetings, how much time was travel, how much time was literally walking from the car to the prospect, and even in front of the prospect, how much time was spent in small talk before he got into selling. And what he realized is he was spending less than 5% of his time doing the thing that was of the highest value, which was selling. He immediately changed his schedule, hired a virtual assistant, did the things necessary so he could spend as much as 40% of his time selling. I'd like you to consider doing the same thing. This is a time management program about sales. And if you're not doing the things that lead to sales, then you're probably not using your time most effectively. So if your job is to hunt, then spend time looking for prospect, whether it's canvassing, whether it's networking, whether it's asking for referrals, whatever it takes to hit that number. If you remember way back when we talked about behaviors of successful individuals, we know that successful sales reps spend 45% of their time prospecting. Can you get your time to 45% in terms of creating new customers? Lastly, as you deal with physical mail, hopefully you don't get a lot of it, but in the past there used to be. When I get mail now, I sort it over the wastebasket. I just make a quick decision if I'm going to act on it, file it, or delete it, or throw it away or destroy it. I actually have a shredding machine that I use that I put mail through if I can, if it's not too big, so that I don't ever have to worry about it with this day and age of identity theft. If it's something that I need to keep, tax return, letter from the IRS, note from the state of Ohio, whatever, then I'll file it. If it's something that needs to be acted on, then I put it in a pile, and then at some point during the day I bring it to my computer and I actually enter it into my computer as an action item to do. If you remember, I don't do to-do lists anymore. I work from my calendar. So consider doing the same thing. How much mail are you going through, spending time reading that's not things that you want to read? How much of it is junk? How much of it needs to be filed? How much of it needs to be acted on? Protect your time. Protect your energy. Now, here's some things that are just general time management hacks that I think might be useful for you. One is use your phone camera. When I'm in meeting and people are writing on grease boards, I don't take notes anymore. I take a picture of the grease board. That way I have it as a record and I can go back and attach it to the file so I know exactly what I'm dealing with. You can do the same thing where you parked your car. Take a picture of a sign, a store, whatever. If you find a good bottle of your wine you like, just take a picture of the label. When you're in a meeting or even when you're trying to work, mute your phone. There's airplane mode, which is a great thing to do. There's a mute mode. And mute your email notifications as well. Work distraction free is what I'm saying, because study after study has shown that it takes about 20 minutes to get back into the flow after you're interrupted. So if you're interrupted 10 times in the course of a day, that's about 200 minutes that you're not using effectively, because you have to use that time to get ramped up. Where was I? What was I doing? Those kind of things. Skip TV, or at least don't watch so much. Nielsen rating says the average American watches about 158 hours of television a month. That's the same amount of time they spend working, if we use the 40-hour work week as an analogy. 4 weeks times 40 is 160 hours. It's pretty clear that we have a lot of time. So when I hear I don't have time, what I'm really hearing is you're not making it a priority. Use your drive time wisely. I'm finding I'm having a lot of fun listening to audiobooks and podcasts as I'm driving. One, it makes the drive go a lot faster, and two, I don't have to feel like I'm wasting my time listening to the radio trying to find something positive and uplifting to listen to. It's a way to really protect what goes into my head so I can maintain a positive mental attitude. And then lastly, create a stop doing list. All of us have things that we're doing that we really want to stop doing. And until we write that down and make a conscious decision to do something about it, it's just going to be something that lurks in our background. So make a stop doing list. And it could be that when you get up in the morning, you're going to stop reading Facebook, for example, and start exercising. It could be that you're going to cut 1 hour a day of television time and use it for reading or personal development. But create that list. One of the stop doing lists might be working 60, 70, 80 hours a week and spend more time with your family, or cultivate external interests that will allow you to round out your time, your behavior, your mindset, and your personality. So here's what I would ask you to think about. I don't have any direct action items that I want you to work on specifically, But I would really like for you to go through this time management module and decide what makes sense for you. What will you learn to say no to? Who will you learn to say no to? Can you turn off notifications on your phone, on your computer? Do you plan for meetings? If not, what would it take? It's just a simple template. You build it once, you use it over and over and over again. And consider working from your calendar and stop using to-do lists. If there's something that you really want to do, schedule it as an action item. Now, the next module is going to be a review. We're at the end, and I thank you so much for your patience, your persistence, and your diligence. So with that being said, let's move on to the next module.